Welcome to the Jedi Ranger. I'm JohnBerry555, and today I'm continuing my 10th anniversary reviews of Star Wars Rebels. Today I'm going to be reviewing Season 2, Episode 16, Homecoming. This episode aired on DisneyXD on February 17th, back in 2016, which of course was 10 years ago. And so in this episode, we get to meet Hera's father, Cham Syndulla. And if you don't know, Cham Syndulla, we saw in some of the write-off Clone Wars episodes, fighting alongside Mace Windu, and they actually do reference those events and all that. In fact, Numa, the Twi'lek girl that Waxer and Boyle befriended, is one of the write-off resistance fighters with Cham Syndulla, which is just neat and all. And in fact, if I remember correctly, her armor has some design that's coming back to Waxer and Boyle. And another thing too, the Twi'leks, the resistance fighters, Cham and his group, they are using scavenged Clone Wars Clone Wars era, so Clone Trooper armor and weapons, which I think is really neat. And given what we later see in the Bad Batch, because we do get to see right off in the Bad Batch, which is said before this episode, but after the Clone Wars, you can kind of see that the Twi'leks did have some clone allies, so not unreasonable at all. And also will explain why, unlike some people, they maybe understand how should I put it? And also too, Numa obviously had that positive interaction with Waxer and Boyle, but I'm suspecting because, well, we know with Captain Howard and a few others that there were some other clones that helped the Twi'leks, which improved the relationship with the Twi'leks after, well, the Empire happened. But that's all stuff that we can only apply in retrospect. Well, some of it's retrospect, some of it's not. But it's actually top of the episode, Homecoming. And, well, the main part of this episode is Hera's relationship with her father. That's the emotional crux of the episode. Yes, there is the plot line of them going to the write-off system because there's an Imperial carrier there, and Phoenix wants to capture that carrier in order to have a place to land a fighter, service them, and all that. And they need to work with Cham in order to get that done. Of course, Cham Syndulla, he wants to blow it up because Blum was at a bombing Twi'lek villages, keep on being launched from there, and he wants a symbol for his people. And of course, this all comes together because we learned that Hera's mother had died fighting the Empire, and at least for Hera, her father came to rely fighting the Empire as more important than her. And yeah. Yes, and that makes total sense, Children generally want attention from their parents, and it's healthy, it creates good relationships and supportive relationships. And part of this episode is they are mending the relationship. Cham goes behind his daughter's back in order to blow up the carrier, but they end up having to work together, end up not blowing up the carrier. Instead, he gets to blow up the light cruiser that's the escort for the carrier, which satisfies his needs, but that only happens after him and his daughter salvage the relationship. And also another neat thing too is there's a scene on board the Ghost where Hera gets into an argument with Cham, and she drops into her native Twi'lek accent, which to us sounds like French. So there's different ways of looking at it. One neat way of looking at that scene from like an in-universe thing is she's actually not speaking basic. She's actually speaking the native Twi'lek language, and so we understand her. It's translated into basic but given a French accent. That's one way of looking at it, which I think is one way of doing it. Or it's just the Twi'lek accent just sounds like French for some reason, or the Twi'lek accent just sounds like a French accent for some reason, which is equally as possible. It's Star Wars. It's fantasy. Yes, we love continuity and all that and the different canon of the lore, but just to remember, sometimes they just do things because it is fun. And another fun scene is when Sabine captures a mouse droid and turns it into basically, and uses it to stun Numa and the other Twi'lek that's working with Cham, because they get into a brief fight. Just remember that happened. But actually, one of the biggest things I also want to talk about in this episode is canon. This episode, if it wasn't confirmed before, confirms that him and Hera are in a relationship. He's acting all proper, for lack of a better term. Basically, for lack of a better term, he's acting like is a nervous boyfriend who's meeting his girlfriend's father for the first time. which is actually true. That's why he's acting that way, nervous and all that. He calls Ezra, Sabine, and Zeb by the wrong names. Like, he's just acting like that nervous boyfriend who desperately wants to impress his girlfriend's father. And given what we know about their relationship, yeah, duh. But this episode is, in the timeline, probably the one that truly confirms it. You know, there's some other things that confirm it, but this confirms it without a doubt. Well, actually, Jason Sindhu definitely confirms it, but we're still too early in the timeline for that. But I did kind of like that, and how he's, always, trying to, appeal to Cham, try to, butter him up, for example. Meanwhile, Harold's like, if you actually knew him, you wouldn't like him. And then when they betray the ghost crew, he's like, yeah, I don't think I like your father anymore. Which is just a great scene, but really, right, that's all great in that. The real thing is about Harold and Cham repairing their daughter-father relationship and actually able to work together to fight the Empire, not just for Ryloth, but for the entire galaxy. And that is what's so important about this episode, is it literally tells us fighting the Empire is not just a thing on one planet, it's on multiple planets. While Star Wars Andor was written well after Star Wars Rebels, there is some parallels, of course. Same time period and all that, but if you remember Nemec and his political philosophy and his manifesto, he talks about how people have already joined the cause even if they don't know it, but also on countless planets and that. The rebellion is not just a local thing. You can have your own individual rebellion, and we do see that in Star Wars Andor in many different ways. From in season 2, the bellhop looking the other way for Cassian multiple times, to the one woman who decides to start singing instead of giving into what the Empire wants them to do, to Cassian actually becoming a rebel. The thing is, like, those individual things are good, but what is one act of rebellion if you're now working with the other rebels and maybe even infighting? This episode is very much against that infighting as a rebellion, which we also saw in Andor when Cassian accidentally got stranded with the Melee P Brigade on what ends up becoming Yavin, and all the squabbling that one unit was doing. And here we get 2 units squabbling, but eventually coming to an understanding and able to fight together, which is actually what defeats the Empire rather than fighting each other. Maybe some kind of message like, sometimes you have to agree to work together because you got to stop the tyrant. Then you can use democracy to figure out what you actually want to do. I don't know. It's just something, something to know that infighting can weaken a cause internally, and you generally want tyrants to have infighting and not the rebels fighting against them, you could say. If you can take this to real life, I got some thoughts. But basically, overall, though, I just wanted to say this is a really good episode. It was great learning more about her and her relationship with her father, and we got some good comedy moments with Kanan as well. If you have any thoughts about this episode, let me know in the comment section down below, and I'll see you next week for episode 17, and the name I forgot, but that's alright, because we'll see it next week. Thank you for watching my video. I do hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please be sure to give this video a like and share. Also, consider subscribing to my channel to stay up to date on all my latest content. In the meantime, thank you for watching, and as always, have a good day, a good night, wherever you are. May the Force be with you, always.